Welcome, I'm Rabbi Phil Bressler of Beit Am in Corvallis, Oregon, and this is the daily summary video for the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Yomi Daily Halacha Learning Project, covering the passage from Siman 77, Seif 16 to Siman 77, Seif 24. You can find links to the Hebrew and English text of this passage and to the calendar of upcoming passages in this video's description. Continuing and wrapping up, discussing Kiddush and Shabbat meals, we need to talk about Seudah Shlishit, literally the third meal. So when the Kitzur says eat 3 meals on Shabbat, it means 3 meals on Saturday. The total actually comes out to 4 meals, including Friday night. So Seudah Shlishit, literally third meal, is somewhat of a misnomer. It's really actually the fourth meal on Shabbat. The reason is to add to the festivity of Shabbat with additional eating and drinking. So whereas you might think normally to wait until after nightfall and Havdalah on Saturday evening so that you could cook a proper dinner, what you should actually do is eat a little bit on the early side on Saturday evening and eat either cold foods prepared ahead of time or foods that are kept warm throughout the day on something like a warming plate, like your cholent or something like this. And ideally, you should make it another full meal, so the understanding of what makes a full meal is bread. So eat bread and make sure to say Birkat Hamazon afterward. In fact, Kitzur says you should break bread at every meal. Kitzur says 2 whole loaves. Yes, this comes to a total of 8 loaves of challah, which strikes me as a rather absurd amount of bread. My family of 4 frequently can't actually even eat 1 whole loaf. And we don't get always to bake our own, so we buy from the store, and that seems like way too much bread. It would be a big waste for us. Some businesses, there's some business here with marking loaves with a knife mark ahead of time so you know where to cut. I don't actually know what this is about or know anyone who does it. But similarly to Kiddush, if the leader leading Hamotzi over the challah for everyone has the 2 loaves in their hands, they bless and eat and exempt everyone else from it, and then you divvy up the challah to everyone who was there. Now, Seif 19 seems to conflict with my memory that I mentioned yesterday of the practice at Camp Ramah. It says you shouldn't eat the morning meal until after you've read the weekly parashah. And some of the older Eidot at Camp Ramah would take a break in services to eat breakfast in between Shacharit and Torah reading. Now, the length of services seems like this makes it pretty unreasonably difficult for most people, I think, to just wait that long in the morning to eat. 2 other things, though, about the Seif strike me as peculiar. One is the line, if you didn't read the Parsha on Erev Shabbat. Now, Torah reading is always a morning thing. And I know that's possibly for the historical reason of just having enough light to read it by without bringing candles close to your expensive Torah scroll. You would only do it in the morning. But the implication seems to be here that you would ordinarily read the Parsha in the evening, which, to the best of my knowledge, is not a thing that is normally done. Unless we're talking about study of the Parsha and not actually public chanting, but that's not clear from the text here. Interestingly, though, some Reform communities actually do read Torah on Friday nights. It's really just because that's when folks in the community show up to synagogue. They don't have enough on Saturday morning to read Torah, so they do it on Friday. Obviously, with electric lights, it's not really an issue anymore. Reading it before Mincha on Shabbat also makes sense to me, but because at Mincha on Shabbat, the Torah reading is actually sort of a preview of the coming week's parasha. But I would have thought that would be the limit. If you're already reading the next week's parsha, I would have thought that's sort of the limit of when you can read the previous week's parsha until. But Kitzur says you actually have until Tuesday night, which also kind of makes some sense. That's the halfway points to the next Shabbat. There should be no fasting on Shabbat ever, so don't even put off eating for a little while. Again, this seems to sort of conflict with the whole no eating until after services thing. Maybe Shabbat morning services in Udvar, when it was still known by that, when Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried was writing the Kitzur. Maybe their services started earlier, or maybe they ended earlier than we're used to. There seems to be a little tension here throughout this relative to our current practices. Kitzur says it's forbidden to grieve over any misfortune. And just to clarify this a little bit, it's not that you're not allowed to be sad. It's not that you're not allowed to be in mourning on Shabbat. Obviously, you're going to feel the way you're going to feel no matter what day it is. But it's important not to bring that into public because of the impact it's going to have on the experience that everyone else is going to have on Shabbat. So, for example, someone who's in Shiva, the 7 days of mourning after a loved one passes away, they stay home on Shabbat, and people come to their house to help them make a minyan, so they're not going out in public and sort of bringing that sadness and that downbeat atmosphere out into the world. I love this line, mitzvah le'angu bechol dvar shehu lo le'anog. It's a mitzvah to delight in everything that gives you delight on Shabbat. It's good to do fun things, whatever you enjoy. It's good to do them on Shabbat. It's good to sleep and it's good to relax, but it's also actually good to spend some time learning on Shabbat as well. Basically, whatever you don't get to do enough of during the week that brings you pleasure, Shabbat's a good day to do it. That's all for today. As always, our learning is dedicated to Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried, the author of the Kitzur, and the historic Jewish community of Uzhhorod, Ukraine. See you tomorrow.